Everybody. By one measure, today's topic is insanely boring. The 1972 presidential election is one of the most lopsided, bloodbath, blowout contests in the history of any presidential election, especially modern presidential elections. This is the contest between Richard Milhous Nixon, who is largely the topic of today's discussion and lecture, versus George McGovern. The election was so bad, the result was so bad and so lopsided that the loser of the previously worst lopsided presidential election, 1964's Barry Goldwater, when he lost to Lyndon Johnson in the wake of Kennedy's assassination, it's so bad that Goldwater, McGovern's Senate colleague, writes to George McGovern after he loses in 72, and he says, this brief note says, "Dear George, if you're going to lose big. Love, Barry." So by that measure, not an incredibly tight election, not a dramatic contest. By another measure, the measure that I'm using today in terms of ethics in American politics and presidential campaigning, among the most interesting presidential elections. And that's because of a few key terms that we're going to talk about regarding Richard Milhous Nixon. In a general sense, Nixon is an amazing case study when somebody who is driven largely by power, we know from hindsight, driven by an intensely tainted view of the political world, even geopolitics, an incredibly paranoid personality. What happens when somebody like that gets both the vice presidency as well as inside the White House and is determined to win at any possible cost? And so to explore that topic, we're going to talk about three different terms. We're going to be interested in, number one, dirty tricks. Nixon coined the term, and Nixon's people coined the term dirty tricks as unpalatable, unethical, largely secret ways to win presidential elections, or really any election. And here what we're largely talking about in terms of dirty tricks are purposefully spreading lies and sabotaging other political campaigns, both from the inside as well as the outside, through the use of double agents and subterfuge, and then finally manipulating the news media with outright lies. We're also going to talk about CREEP, which is an acronym. The acronym CREEP stands for the Committee to Re-elect the President, which was an organization of people who were largely burglars. They called themselves plumbers, euphemistically, who were the emissaries of Nixon's dirty tricks, right? They were the ones actually committing the dirty tricks on the ground so that Nixon could look like he had his hands clean. And then finally, this all culminates in August-ish of 1972, and then when Nixon resigns early in 1973 in our third term, which is Watergate. So those are the three things we're going to talk about today, with an eye towards the role of dirty tricks and Nixonian tactics in modern presidential elections.